Day, we continue coverage of things related to the ongoing immigration enforcement surge in Minnesota. And during this, we have heard fairly repeatedly in statements from ICE and the Department of Homeland Security an accusation that Minnesota, the prisons and the jails, are not cooperating with ICE, and that the state has repeatedly released dangerous non-citizen criminals, the undocumented, into the community. You heard the president just sort of making that allegation as well, saying that these are the people that they're tracking down that have been released, that they're tracking them down, arresting them, detaining them, and deporting them. Now, Minnesota's Corrections Commissioner Paul Schnell told me on Friday that is simply not true. The state notifies ICE when they intake an inmate who is not a citizen. They notify ICE when they'll be released to honor the detainer requests. Today we're hearing the same thing from a county sheriff, that these statements are often inaccurate and unfair. Dakota County Sheriff Joe Leko joining me now to break down some of the procedures here and his response to some of these statements. Joe, you said that this is something that you as a sheriff thought also it was important to sort of clear the air on here when you hear these, accusations or statements that jails, in Minnesota, and I guess they say Minnesota, it could refer to prisons and jails, do not honor ICE detention requests. What do you have to say about that?
Hi, Rob. Thank you for having me on. I think just as a clarification, this confusion or misunderstanding on what is actually an ICE detainer is coming out from all over the place. It's on social media. People are having their own interpretations, and there's not much clarity. It's a very complicated subject, so it's hard to explain, and you get a lot of different opinions. And I think it's important as we hear more of this that we understand what is an ICE detainer, and is local law enforcement, can they hold on an ICE detainer or immigration charge? And how do they cooperate with ICE? Because all that gets kind of used loosely. We hear a lot of times that local sheriffs do not cooperate. Well, as we've talked before, do not is a lot different than cannot. Mm-hmm. And we cannot enforce immigration detainers or arrest on immigration alone. As a peace officer.
Yeah, and that's sort of another parallel thing here when, you say, you hear that, police departments, sheriff's departments that say, we do not enforce immigration law because we want to make sure people are calling 911 when there's a public safety issue. We don't want them to worry that we're going to be checking their immigration or citizenship status. But you're saying more clarity to that is that you are unable to do that. It's not just that you won't, it's that you don't have the authority to do that?
That is correct, Rob. It's not a choice, it's an authority. We don't have the state authority, federal authority to arrest on immigration. So a lot of times you'll hear that the law enforcement does not cooperate, does not enforce. Well, we cannot. And I think that message to the public is to know that if we're there, we cannot enforce immigration. We're not going to arrest you if we're there for a medical or an assault or a dispute where we're called for service. That's not our primary, and that's not what our authority is.
Yeah, and explain the legality here of what prevents local law enforcement from enforcing citizenship or immigration status. Why can't you?
Because that's a federal law that is not given to the state authorities. So there's a separation of state and federal in the 10th Amendment. We are responsible to enforce state laws, local laws. The federal government is responsible for federal laws, including immigration. So it's just not delegated to us as part of our authority.
Okay. Now back to the detainer request, which is something that ICE will give to say when this person is released, we want to pick them up. I know you said you had roughly 80 of those last year for the Dakota County Jail. How does that process work for you, and how often are they able to make that pickup when they put a request in?
So that's a good question. I think we need to first start with what is an ICE detainer, and that's a request from a ICE officer to hold that person up to 48 hours prior or past their normal release from charges or state charges, or they post bail or the judge releases them. It's a request from an ICE officer. It's not a judicially signed and reviewed warrant, right? So there's a difference. If that was the case, if there was a judge involved in the review and placing this warrant, we would have the ability to hold. But on an ICE detainer, which is a civil administrative ask to hold them, we will receive those on people that are in our custody. We are full transparency with the public. You can get on our Dakota County Sheriff's Office app and you can look at our current roster of inmates. ICE has all that ability too, and they get a report from us every day on the new arrests. Who's there. If they have a person of interest that they want to put an ICE detainer on, they will submit that. And then we communicate with them once they go to court, if they were released or they post bail, and when their estimated time might be of release, and they'll send an agent here to take custody of that person, if so. And sometimes they don't make it here on time. We can't hold them beyond the state charges. There is state law that went through the Court of Appeals. A case out of Nobles County about 4 years ago, that if we hold somebody beyond the state charges on, in this case, an immigration hold, there'd be a second arrest, and you're violating the Fourth Amendment as far as another seizure.
A constitutional violation.
Yeah. So I swore to uphold the Constitution, right, as all of us did in public safety, and that is part of the Constitution. And I also have a responsibility as a sheriff to assess risk, and if we are holding people beyond that, against the advice of our legal counsel, and we do get sued, that comes at the cost of taxpayers as far as paying out these lawsuits, which was the case in Nobles County. So there's some confusion on, what is an ICE detainer and why aren't we holding on them? There's legal issues behind it, and that's the reason. It's not a political reason or a belief.
Yeah. So you notify them when they'll be released, but from a county standpoint, it's different from the state standpoint, where you know when a sentence is going to be completed and released weeks ahead of time or months ahead of time. In your case, it depends on, if somebody's in the jail and they have a court hearing, they may be assigned a bond, or they may be released without bond, and so the notification then time frame to tell the agents this is when he'll be released can be fairly short.
It can, but on most of our fresh arrests, we call them a new arrest, they must be seen in front of a judge within 36 hours or 48 hours, the 36-hour rule. So they know when they're going to court, usually by noon, within a day and a half, depending on when their initial arrest was. So they, meaning ICE, will know when that court appearance is, and they're keeping tabs on it. If there's a potential release, they know that, we've seen a court at noon. Most likely they'd be released around 3, but we just confirm that with them if there's a bail placed or if they're released. So they have an idea beforehand, but yes, the time and the lead time for them to pick someone up is not quite as long and definite as it would be with the state and the Department of Corrections.
So when you hear statements saying that, these are violent criminals that are being picked up in Minnesota, in the community, that the state has allowed to go free, what's your response to that?
Well, I would agree that there's some people here that got picked up on detainers that are very violent and dangerous to public safety. We do everything under our authority and ability to communicate with ICE and the federal government to come and pick up these individuals from our jail. We coordinate with them. So we're not intentionally releasing them. We are following the law. We're following our authority, or lack of in this case, to make sure that they're getting transferred to ICE agents for detention or removal processes. So I know we've been cooperative. I know that the majority, if not most, if not all, of our sheriff's offices within the state, this is how they operate as well. So I think it's just an opportunity to educate the public here today on what that means. I mean, local law enforcement isn't cooperating with ICE. If you could only just cooperate with ICE, I see it and hear it all the time, but we are cooperating by doing what we can under our authority, by communicating what we can, law enforcement to law enforcement data, to protect public safety, but at the same time, there's a legal and authority reason why we can't do certain things. It's not a choice, and I think we need to be clear on that.
And another thing that you can provide some clarity to as well is there are some counties, some sheriff's departments or jails that have contracts with ICE, and many that do not. And people might wonder, well, why don't more jails or more sheriff's departments have these contracts and agreements so that they can hold these people longer? Explain how that works.
Yeah, that'd be a contract with ICE or the federal government to contract a certain number of beds designated to hold their detainees pending immigration hearings. And for those agencies that can do that or jails that can do that, first of all, you have to have the capacity to be able to do that. You have to have the resources and staff member and medical staff to be able to do that. A lot of our metro counties, it's difficult to do that because we're full. Unfortunately, our jails are full. We don't have beds available to do that, and that's in our case here too in Dakota County. But they can have an agreement with ICE to house their detainees, and there are several within, I think maybe 6 or 7, I think, within the state that currently do that. A lot of them are up north or out west, smaller jails, but they are abiding by that and contracting with ICE to be able to do that. So that's one option. It's just it's not an option for us here, unfortunately. Here.
Yeah. So if somebody says, "Oh, you're not cooperating because you don't have a contract to hold detainees," it's not that you're choosing not to cooperate, it's you cannot meet the requirements of what that contract would be.
Yes, and you need bed space, and we're close to full here almost all the time, and what we've heard is you have to have a minimum of 60 beds open, and we don't have that here. We'd go over, and then now it's costing the taxpayers money to board out, and it's just we just don't have that opportunity here locally in the metro area. Some of the outer state jails might have more beds available to accommodate.
Okay. Dakota County Sheriff Joe Leko. Joe, thanks for taking time out today. I know it's always busy in your world, and I appreciate that. Trying to add some clarity to what ICE detainers are, what sheriffs can and cannot do in terms of holding folks when those detainers come in, and how those contracts with ICE work. Joe, thanks so much. Appreciate it, Sheriff.
Thank you, Rob. Appreciate it.
You bet. Have a good day.